Okay, I got into the track again yesterday and managed to put in another 500 laps. Playing with MTC2 setups. So I'll take you quickly through the results. So this is from the last attempt. This was the poster child. You can see the fast top 10 2030. This was the other setup that I ran with the highest roll center I tested that day, which didn't have the greatest results and was very difficult to drive. So I started with this setup and I ended with this setup. So you can see here that made a significant improvement, 10th and a half improvement in fast lap and in the top 30. Compared to the medium-high one from the previous week, fairly similar top 30, but faster fast lap, which I don't really put too much emphasis on because sometimes you get it right. So what did I do and how did I get there? So I started with this high roll center version with the camber gain correction that we applied after the first round of testing. So what I did initially, first thing I did was I took all the shims out of the upper shock mount. What this does, laying the shocks down, is softens everything up. So you can see here the ride stiffness, or wheel rate as it's also called, is significantly lower than what it was with the shocks stood up. And this also affects your roll sensitivity, which is the measure of how responsive the chassis is going to be. So just doing that, I lowered it quite a bit. The result was, yes, it was easier to drive, not as easy as I wanted it to be. So I went another step and I changed to the 7-turn progressive spring, and that made all the difference in the world. The car suddenly became extremely easy to drive, very consistent, no issues with getting up on two wheels or worse, traction rolling. So I thought, okay, let's carry on down this path. The next thing I tried is I just went back up here a couple shims just to see what would happen with the slightly increased stiffness, and that didn't work so great. So I went back down here, and then I thought, well, let's see if we can do some shock oil changes. So I went to 650 CST shock oil on the front shock, which you may say, wow, that's crazy. Well, it's not really that crazy. This is equivalent to 50 weight oil. Wasn't that long ago we used to run 60 weight oil in the front and 40 weight oil in the back. So it's not really that huge a difference. You can see here that the damping ratio, which is a measure of how much damping is in the system. The rule of thumb for the best response and stability from an engineering perspective is you want a damping ratio around 0.6. That gives you good response and stable performance. You don't get a lot of oscillation. So we're just below that, so that makes a lot of sense. And went out and ran that one, and lo and behold, that was the best setup that I came up with. Now, I was going to go and change the rear to 650 as well, but unfortunately I broke something and I couldn't repair it in time before having to leave. So what I will do next time is I'm probably going to run 650 in the rear, and I'm probably going to, oh sorry, I forgot to mention what I ended up with was 6.5 turn rear spring. So what I'll probably go to next time is I want to try the 6.5 turn progressive in the rear and 650 CST as well, and we'll see what that does. So for comparison purposes, here is the numbers for the three different setups. So this is the poster child from last time. the mid-high roll center with the camber gain correction, and this is what I started with, was the high roll center with camber gain correction. So you can see here the main difference between these two is the chassis roll sensitivity. The stiffness, ride frequency is very similar, and the reason for the difference is because of the difference in the roll center height. So with the final version that I ended up with was the high roll center. So our roll center is the same. A slight difference here because I did went back to 2 degrees of camber on the front, so that slight change in the linkage makes a little difference in the roll center height and also in camber gain numbers, but pretty insignificant. So you can see here now, definitely softer. The ride stiffness is lower, the frequency is lower, but the big change is in the overall chassis roll sensitivity. So you can see I've gone way softer in roll, which just makes the car easier to drive and more consistent. So in the damping, as I just previously mentioned, I increased the damping, which makes it more stable again. So that is it. Probably what I'm going to do next time is I want to try and go back to this mid-high camber gain version, which was the previous poster child, and see if I can get this one to be a little bit better. The problem I'm going to run into is, number one, the tires I'm using are really worn right now, so I'm actually shocked that I'm still able to make improvements in my overall lap time. And the other thing is I'm probably reaching the limit of my abilities. So anyways, stay tuned. I'm going to carry on and see if we can get some even better setups. If somebody wants to try these setups and report back, that would be really awesome. Okay, that's it.